I think they just sent out a push notification. All right, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen. I might go away for a second. All right. Awesome. Welcome everybody to another talk by me. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to do an intro to the paleo and Mediterranean diet. So a little bit about me. My name is Mary. I'm a dietitian and I have a master's degree in nutrition and over 4 years of experience in the health and nutrition field. So today, for those of you joining us, welcome. If this is your first time, hello. And if you've been here before, welcome back. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Paleo and Mediterranean diets. So I really want the high level overview intro to this. It's not going to get too nitty gritty in the details. I just kind of want to introduce these diets to you. So we'll also, I'm kind of a science nerd, so research and make sure these diets are good. Because sometimes the popular science and what's in the media might be a little different than what the science says behind it. For each of those diets, we're also going to talk about the foods and the food groups, the things we should eat, the things we shouldn't eat, some stuff like that. So we'll get into some detail, but again, it's going to be mostly an introduction. And then lastly, we're going to kind of go over like how to get started in these diets. If you're listening to this and you're kind of trying to test out different diets, maybe by the end, you're like, oh, I really want to try one of these. So we'll kind of go over some ways to get these diets started and incorporated in your lives. So we really want these sessions that I'm giving right now, we really want it to be as interactive as it can be. So you'll notice on your screen, there should be something that says like questions or, submit a question or something like that. Go ahead and if you have any questions, jot them in there really quick. They can be on topic, but if you have a nutrition question you're just dying to ask a dietitian, I'm more than fine with answering those as well if you want to put those in the chat. And then even if you don't have a question, if you just want to go in there and kind of check out some of the questions, and you can give it an upvote. So go ahead and do that if you really want to hear an answer to a question, because the more upvotes it is, just means the more likely I'll be able to see it and answer it for you. All right, so let's get into this. The first one we're going to talk about today is the paleo diet. So the paleo diet is based on this idea that the prehistoric human diet, all the way back in the Paleolithic era, or the paleo, that's where that comes from, that their diets were just vastly different than ours. And so this paleo diet is based around those foods that would have been common during that time. So the idea, kind of the overarching idea and like reason behind this is that they are guessing that our genes that we have now are not made to process the foods that we eat now. Kind of this idea that our diets and the food and agriculture industry evolved faster than our bodies could keep up with. So that's the prevailing idea and this kind of reasoning behind it. So then I kind of did a little bit of a deep dive into the science. I tried to look for studies and looked into the research. And surprisingly, there actually weren't that many studies. I was kind of surprised given how popular this diet is. There were some studies that showed some evidence between, eating a paleo diet and losing weight. And most of the time, the researchers just theorized that this was because this diet helps with satiety, and that just means staying full. So people who eat the paleo diet tend to feel fuller a little bit longer and eat less calories throughout the day, was kind of the overarching idea there. But there was also some research, some of these studies where participants had improved labs, so like our measures of health. Things like their blood pressure went down, their A1C, which is how we measure diabetes, that improved, and their blood lipids improved. So that would be things like cholesterol and triglycerides. So it did have some evidence that it could help with that. One of the things that kept coming up, though, in these studies is participants who didn't stick to the study, to the diet, kept mentioning that it was a really hard diet to stick to and it could be expensive. And so that was kind of why some of the people who were in these studies didn't stick with the diet. So the science can be kind of mixed. There was only a few studies, but in these studies, people did lose weight, their labs improved. So, it can go kind of both ways with the paleo diet. So the next diet we'll look at is the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet, there's actually a ton of research behind the Mediterranean diet. It is very well studied. So this Mediterranean diet is based on the diet of the people who live bordering the Mediterranean Sea. So researchers started noticing that some of the healthiest people in the world lived in this region of the world by the Mediterranean Sea. So they went and kind of studied them, and that is how this diet came out, is they realized that all these really healthy people had a very similar diet, and that's how we got the Mediterranean diet. So this diet, however, is a little bit more of like a dietary pattern and a lifestyle. We'll see a little bit later. It really does incorporate a lot of different things other than just food. And so, like I said, there was actually a lot of research behind this diet. And it did show some really promising results in weight loss and preventing and managing heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. The Mediterranean diet is actually one of the most recommended diets in a healthcare setting, and it's often recommended for those who already have heart conditions, or it's recommended for healthy aging and some of our elderly population because it just has a lot of science to back it up. All right. So, what are the foods I can eat? So, remember, I set up this size of these slides so that you can screenshot anything if you want. So, go ahead and do that. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the little question box. All right. So, what are foods we can eat? So, when we think of the paleo diet, we're thinking of our prehistoric diets, right? So think like hunter-gatherers and really small-scale farming. Those are going to be the foods that we're going to eat in the paleo diet. And this diet is really specific with foods you can eat and foods you can't eat. They're very, very specific about it, as you can see kind of from this picture. I really love teaching diets in this like pyramid-like structure because I think it's very intuitive, right? That bottom one is going to be the most of our foods and the top one is going to be the least. So if we look at the bottom, the paleo diet is really, really meat heavy. So, because the hunting, right? So it's things like, our chicken, our protein, beef, bacon, fish, things like eggs as well. We also see some like nuts and nut butters. There's a jar of peanut butter there. So those are all going to be things that are going to be recommended in this paleo diet. And that's what's going to take up a big chunk of our diet. Next, we see our veggies. So veggies are going to be next. We're thinking our gatherers here, right? So pretty much all veggies, they say just eat as much as you want. And really kind of all the veggies. You'll notice at the very bottom with the slashes through, there are some veggies that would not be recommended in the paleo diet. And it was kind of funny because I actually couldn't figure out why. I was just researching this. I was like, wait, if you can eat veggies, why can't you eat potato, corns, and beans? So the beans are legumes, and legumes you can't eat on the paleo diet, so I get that. But I did not find a very satisfying answer for why you can't eat corn and potatoes, because they are vegetables. So I'll be honest, I could not figure that one out. But all the other veggies will be available on this paleo diet. And then at the very top, we see fruits. So we're going to eat slightly less fruits than we do veggies, and that just has to do with the sugar. We're kind of this diet, you really do want to back off on some sugar. And just in general, we want to eat more veggies than fruits. So those are going to be the main things in our diet. But the paleo diet, it can be a tough diet because there are a lot of things we can't eat. So we can't eat grains or dairy. So grains are going to be things like our breads, pastas, rices, everything like that. Those are eliminated from this diet, as well as dairy. So in dairy, we're thinking our milk, our cheese, and our yogurt. So those are going to be things we're really not going to eat at all in this diet, as you can see from those pictures at the bottom of the screen. It's also a very unprocessed, unrefined diet because we're thinking, what did these hunter-gatherers eat? They did not eat potato chips. They did not eat really highly processed gluten-free breads, right? They ate rice, or not even rice. They ate broccoli and fruits and vegetables from the ground. So that's kind of the thought process you're going to stick with in this diet. So you may be thinking, wait, the paleo diet, those foods sound really similar to the keto diet. And they are for the most part. A lot of these meals could look the exact same. However, there are some really big differences. So this triangle on the left is going to be the keto diet, and the triangle on the right is going to be the paleo diet. So we see at the very bottom of that keto diet, we're eating fat, whereas the paleo diet, we're eating proteins. So there can be a lot of overlap in those categories. But if you remember from our keto talk, we actually don't, in a keto diet, we don't want to eat more protein than normal. So you see on the left triangle in that middle section where it says the 25% and it's orange, that is the protein section for the keto diet. So 25% of our diet would come from protein. That's a pretty normal amount to come from protein. That's pretty average. So in keto, we're not switching our protein. We're just eating more fat. So in paleo, we're eating more protein. So sometimes that can come with a little bit fat, but the emphasis is on the protein. And the paleo diet too, it also emphasizes fruits and vegetables, right? So we see on the right side in the paleo triangle, there's a lot more vegetables in the paleo diet, whereas we see in the keto diet, the veggies is all the way up on the top. So there can be some overlap, and they're a lot more similar than most diets, but there are some really key differences between keto and paleo. All right, so next we have our Mediterranean diet. So what foods and food groups can I eat on the Mediterranean diet? So interestingly, I actually did not know this, but the Mediterranean diet, there isn't one exact diet like how there is with paleo. Some foods are in, some foods are out. So there's actually really no super super rules to follow with the Mediterranean diet. It really is more of a dietary pattern. And one reason for this is that the Mediterranean diet, like I said earlier, is based on quite a few countries. It's not just one country. So the diets in each of those countries are slightly different depending on which country you're in. So that's why they didn't pick just one strict Mediterranean diet. It's kind of just the average of a bunch of different diets. So like I said, there's no strict rules. It really is just patterns. It's incorporating more foods into your diet and less of certain foods into your diet. So we'll look here at our Mediterranean pyramid. And one of the things I like the most about this diet is at the very bottom, the foundation of this pyramid has almost nothing to do with food. It is physical activity. So it's having an active lifestyle, trying to be active every day, and eating food with loved ones. So that actually, there's quite a bit of science around that as well, saying that enjoying your meal time, slowing it down a little bit, can really make overall eating more fun, and tends to be something that healthier societies and people do. So I love that it kind of starts there. And next, we are going to have the bulk of our diet is going to come from, we see fruits, we see veggies, we see grains in that, and oils. So things like olive oil, stuff like that are going to make up, and like seeds and herbs, that's going to be the majority of our diet on the Mediterranean diet. So we can already see that this diet is vastly different than the paleo diet. Especially in the sense that grains are really emphasized in this Mediterranean diet. So next is fish and seafood. So this probably isn't surprising that this is going to be such a big part of this diet, since this diet is based on people who live on the sea. So we have, shrimp, salmon, different types of fish are really going to be emphasized in this diet. And then above that, we have poultry, eggs, and dairy. So poultry is going to be our birds, our turkey, our chicken, stuff like that, as well as eggs, cheese, yogurts, stuff like that. And the very top one I also find very interesting. This diet puts meats and sweets in the same category. And these are things that we really are going to want to limit. I don't think of any other diet I can think of that where you eat meat, where meat is all the way at the top of this pyramid. So I think that's kind of interesting about the Mediterranean diet. So it really is limiting meat. So the paleo diet and the Mediterranean diet are very, very different. And this is one of the only diets I know as well where wine is part of the diet. So this is not a terrible diet. It is recommended in moderation of 1 glass a night. And that doesn't mean like once a week you drink 7 glasses and that's the same. It's not an average. It is 1 glass a night. And then water. All right. So tips to get started. So hopefully, you've been listening to these and maybe you were like, oh, I wasn't sure which diet I wanted, but the Mediterranean diet sounds really interesting, or the paleo diet, and you want to start. The first thing I would recommend is kind of doing some research. So like going to a talk like this is a great place to start. And then when you're done, kind of looking into things on your own. There are some really great articles I read on Mayo Clinic and Healthline that were really reputable and had a little bit more of a deep dive into these diets than I did today. So that's also a really great place to start. Then I also recommend trying it out before you go like all in on a diet you've never tried before and buy 5 cookbooks and a rice cooker and like maybe try and see if it'll work for you. Prep a few meals or maybe try eating like a full day according to this diet. How was it? Did it work for you? Could you do this for a week, a month, a year? Because ideally these diets wouldn't be something you would go on for like a month or 2. These would be kind of your new ways that you eat. So make sure you find something that works for you because we're all so different. And I also recommend, getting a friend to join you. This is one of my favorite tips to give. You're a friend, your partner, or even, using this app and the community center of this app to just be like, hey, starting a new diet, who's on it with me? Can be a really great way to kind of keep you accountable and keep you going. All right, so last slide, bottom line. I'm a really big fan of picking a diet pattern for yourself or kind of an eating style. I think it really helps to, streamline what you're eating and give you some focus, especially when you're trying to eat healthier. So I kind of recommend picking at least one style, and I think both of these are really great options. So the science says when it comes to diets, and especially if you're thinking for weight loss or anything, the science says that the most effective diet is the diet that you stick to. So find one that works for you. I recommend, like I said above, trying it out, trying a few meals, seeing kind of what works. Because there are things I liked about both of these diets. Both of them, they really emphasize fruit and vegetable consumption, which is always going to be my number one tip for people is just more fruits and veggies. So I like that that is part of both of these diets. However, if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the Mediterranean diet mostly because me personally. I really like that the Mediterranean diet emphasizes physical activity and your relationships and like your lifestyle into this diet. And I think that, yeah, I just think that's really great because especially if you want to do a healthy lifestyle, but you just stop at nutrition, that's not the whole package, right? So doing some physical activity, just even more benefits. And I also think the paleo diet can be tough for some people because it cuts out grains and dairy. And so it can make it a little harder to go out and eat or to eat with others when your diet can be so restrictive. So those are just my kind of last thoughts. However, there are some people who just don't eat that many grains and cheese or, are like, I could cut those out. And paleo would be great for you. So they're definitely very different diets. And then just always kind of finding one that works for you. So those are all my thoughts today. I'm going to stop my screen share. All right, there I am. All right. So I'm going to check out the questions. Remember, on your screen, there should be this little button that says, add questions or anything like that. So go ahead and pop those in. Let me just check them out. Oh, perfect. Well, I see the first question I already kind of answered. If I had to recommend a diet, which one would I choose? So, like I said, there are such different diets that it really, can be up to you. I know I couldn't give up cheese, me neither. That one would be really tough for me. And grains too. I don't know. Those are some of my favorites. So it really can be up to you. Like I said, the Mediterranean diet is a little bit more lenient, which can be easier on people. And the Mediterranean diet has just like a little bit more science to back it up, especially when it comes to having heart disease or getting older. There's some great science behind the Mediterranean diet. Is there any diet I would recommend over a Mediterranean diet? Great question. I love these questions. I think honestly the Mediterranean might be my favorite. So I personally am a pescatarian, and that one is, like I said, it's just more like an eating style. But that one I highly recommend too. But yeah, I would say the Mediterranean might be my favorite. There's one other one that's kind of similar. It's called the DASH diet, but that one's more like a little bit more clinical. Not a lot of people do it unless they're told to go onto the DASH diet. But the Mediterranean diet, I think there's so many resources out there for it, so many books, cookbooks, so many Pinterest recipes that, you could find a lot of resources that would make it a lot easier on you. All right. Let me check any other questions. All right. Yeah, that one, it wasn't too much of a deep dive. I thought, maybe some people hadn't heard of these before, so I would just kind of keep it really general for this talk. So it looks like those were all the questions. This was a nice short one today. Thank you all so much for coming. Oh, did I see one more? There we go. For keeping the diet as a lifestyle, is paleo healthy? Yeah, so paleo can totally be healthy. There was when I was looking this up, there were some great recipes that I found because paleo really emphasizes vegetables too. Like there's a lot of meat in that diet, which, can be good or bad depending on how much, but it also really emphasizes vegetables, which I love and can be very healthy. So I think paleo can be a really great option for people if you're a meat eater and you do like vegetables. I think paleo diet can be a great healthy transition diet for you if you did want to pick something. And I think it would be fine as a diet to stay on, forever. Whereas like the keto diet, if anyone who is on here came to the keto one, The keto diet is something you don't want to be on for that long just because of how much fat you're eating. But with the paleo diet, you're not eating as much fat, you're eating way more veggies. So it could be a great diet to be on for forever. Okay, let's see. I'm pre-diabetic. What do you think of the Atkins diet? All right. Thank you for shooting me that question. So with pre-diabetes, what do I think of the Atkins diet? So Atkins is actually really close to a keto diet, and there can be some science around, the keto and Atkins diet really do help promote weight loss, and the weight loss can help with pre-diabetes. However, my own personal opinion, I'm not a huge fan of those really high fat diets. I'm a little bit more partial to something that's like a Mediterranean diet, only because when you're pre-diabetic, you're trying to make some healthy lifestyle changes so you don't become diabetic. And those healthy lifestyle changes, you don't just want to do them for a month, 2 months. You want, hopefully, to change things up and keep these healthy lifestyle changes going for the rest of your life to keep preventing that diabetes. So when you do something like a Atkins or a keto, those are meant to be very short-term solutions. You need a long-term solution. So I would stick more towards, if you did want to pick a diet, I would pick something like a paleo or a Mediterranean, something that is more of a long-term diet. And physical activity can also be really beneficial for prediabetes as well. All right. Looks like those are all the questions. Thank you so much for your questions today, guys. I'm going to jump off. Have a great rest of your night and rest of your week. It's Wednesday. We did it. Woo, halfway through. Bye, everybody.